Hi, this is John Hilbrands, and today I'm going to show you how to build a 3-step redwood jacuzzi steps. So let's get started. First off, I'm going to have step-by-step in my notes. So I'm just going to copy this information and put it in the YouTube post. That'll show you what you need, a cut list, and then a placement of cuts so that your boards will be optimized. But let me mention that we are using 3 2x6x12s and 1 2x6x16 to make this. And basically it's a solid based unit in that we have solid sides instead of open sides and a solid front instead of an open step. And then it actually has a solid back as well. And the reason I designed it that way was because I didn't want rodents to nest under there. You also noticed that it has some gaps for rainwater to drain. And I chose redwood because it's water resistant, or water and rot resistant, I should say. And then it's also termite and pest resistant. So it's better for a wet location like where your jacuzzi is. So it's a better choice than regular wood that's been somehow primed or painted or something. Let's get started on the build now. And basically we're going to have these 9 pieces: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're all exactly the same length, and that is 35 3/4 inches. So why is it 35 3/4? Because I want to get 4 of them out of a 2x12. And by giving you a 1/4 inch and a blade is only an 1/8 inch, I'm saying basically you're not going to have an issue with the saw blade taking too much of your waste away, that you end up not being able to fit them all in, 4 of them in a 2x12. The sides here, you'll notice they're stacked, and if you see 2 on the first 2x6 and you see the 2 on the next 2x6, and they're progressively getting shorter, so those are each individual sections that are then connected with the 2x6 on the inside to hold them together. So we're just going to consider these as 3 individual frame pieces that we're going to layer together and then marry on the inside once we're done. So let's get started on the cuts. So first off, you would cut all 9 of these on your saw. You usually use a chop saw, and they're all going to be 35 3/4. The first, now I did this differently. You notice this one is solid across and this one is showing an end grain. For my directions, it's pretending that this is solid across. So also my dimensions. So let's pretend I did it that way. When you make your first one, you suddenly realize I don't like the look of that, and you change it, but you can't waste that much wood. So unfortunately, the first one has a reveal that I didn't like as much. So our side piece here, I have to use my cheat sheet here. My side piece is 32.5 inches. So this first one is 32.5 inches, right? And it actually will stop here, and then we'll have the other piece coming across. And then we take one of these many pieces that we have, and that's going to be used for the front. And then we're going to have another 32.5 inch on the other side. And then I'm going to temporarily use one of these on the back. So all of these bottom pieces, these all the way around, are going to be cut at 4 inches, because the reason is, notice how this goes below a step. So if we don't, the first step's going to be a little higher than the other 2. Well, that's okay. You might want them all even. And certainly if you're doing it for someone else, you'd want them all even, because they could trip and they'd get mad at you or maybe even sue you, who knows. So the first one is cut. Basically, you set your saw at the thickness of a 2x6, which is about 1.5 inches, and then you take that much off of one of your 2x6s. So that's going to be on the side one of these, and the other side one. The back one we're just using temporarily, so we'll keep that at the full height for now, okay? So that will make a square, and then we will take our spacer, which is set at 7/16, and we're going to put a spacer to make the toe kick space, and we're going to screw those in. These are flush, and that will set our first section. Now we're going to take our next section, and this is going to be 21.5 inches, and then a normal face piece. That's one of these 9 pieces. Screw those in, and then again we're going to use our spacer and a spacer and screw these in flush, and we'll also use one temporarily on the back. Once we've got these on, we can take that back piece that's holding it square and we can use it somewhere else. So now we've now probably taken them off, and we'll use it on this last one, which is 10 inches. And we'll put this on, use our spacer, and screw them on. So we'll have all of these. It's probably a good idea to pre-drill these. One of them you would not pre-drill because this one's going to be narrowed, but 8 of them pre-drill. And to pre-drill, I basically took a sample piece and I cut where I wanted to put the nail, and you can see I put a line there and line there, and that way I centered them nicely. And then I pre-drilled just these boards. I didn't pre-drill into the base, so I just had all of those pre-drilled and ready to go, and that was kind of nice because I can just, then also they will countersink a lot better if there's a hole there. You can see that the belt sander touched the top of that one, but most of them they were countersunk below. And so now we have all 3 sections built, and let me push this out a little bit so I can lift it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a 9.5 piece, and we're going to just use our spacer and put it here and screw this port on. And you can see that this is basically double wide. This one's triple wide, and the last one's only a single wide. So we screw the double wide on, one there and one here, and we'll have to flip it to do both. And then finally we do our short little 10-inch piece and screw that. Now, about these lengths. Whenever you put spacers in and you're worried about the thickness, you can see how it's called the comedy of errors, where each time you move something a little further back, there's no way to guess how far your length is going to be. So I allowed about a 1/2 inch extra here. So these are actually going to stick out a little bit far. So what we'll do is we'll just put a right angle on this, draw your line, and use your skill saw to trim it. So we allowed enough in my dimensions to have this oversized, and then you can trim it at this point. And then we use this piece. These are inset. So basically they're just inset. That way they don't extend and be further out than your top step. So these last boards are full length. And we're going to keep them full length, and that's just to keep critters from making a home under there. Let's go to my sheet and I'll walk you through that, even though we're going to have that on the top of the YouTube channel. But let me give you a little basis of what it is. So we have the 3 2x6x12s and the 1 2x6x16. We're going to use Deckmate 3.5 inch screws, and those have the Torx heads on them. And then we're going to use a 2.5 inch screws. So basically our 3.5ers are going to go straight through here, whereas our 2.5 inches are shorter, so they'll come in from underneath, so they won't show a head there. And so we'll screw them in from the inside. Okay. And then we're going to finish with our belt sander. Now, when I was running the belt sander, there's a certain part that basically gets hidden, and a belt sander kind of touches here. It's kind of hard to do this, and you can actually see how I wasn't able to get it high enough. So it would probably be a good idea before you married them all up to do the belt sanding, because you'll be able to get it further down and able to get to the edge without making a bad sand, making a line or something with your sander. All right, the treads and risers. What I mentioned were those 9 35 3/4 pieces, and the sides, the 2 32.5 inch, those are going to be the bottoms, and we're going to narrow them to 4 inches. But basically we're going to take off the thickness of a 2x6. We're going to take that much off of them with our table saw, the bottom ones. The next ones we don't need to shorten, narrow rather. And remember, these are about an extra 1/2 inch longer than they need to be, and that's to be trimmed later. And then the backs are inset, and those are going to be 3 32 3/4. And one of them is going to be narrowed because it will end up being the bottom as well. And then our inside connectors, we have 2 9.5 and 2 15 inchers. Placement of cuts, I'll let you look at that on the YouTube channel, and I won't need to go over that. But let's go over to our diagram. We basically all of these are 35 3/4. And then our sides, you see how it says 9.5? That's actually what its finish is going to be. Don't try and cut it at that. Cut it at the 10. It's better to trim it after you do it, because as you space them, this will get progressively longer or shorter depending on how you space them. I spaced them with a 7/16 spacer. All right, and the final one is 32. We'll end up with 32, but do 32.5. So do it at my cut list. Where's the 32s? There they are. Do it at the cut list dimensions, and everything will work out for you. So I did this video because I had to look at pictures from Google Pictures, and they really weren't showing dimension wise, and I think it's kind of good to get it figured out dimensionally. And I think as far as the height, we ended up with a 16-inch height, which is really good. We chose 2x6s because they're a lot cheaper. Had I used 2x10s, even if I could find them in Redwood, they would have been very prohibitive. I tried to use as little wood as we can, but I did want it to be fully enclosed. We do have to gap them so that water will get through, and that will keep them so the color won't basically brown in the middle from having more water damage, essentially. All right, so I hope this video helped you. If it does, give it a good thumbs up, and I'd also appreciate a subscribe. Good luck with your project.